I'm Dante. I run Dante Sports Data, where we find the most consistent players and teams across all sports every single day, so you don't have to guess. Today I'm going to be talking about team defensive ratings for player props and why the 4th ranked defense can actually be a great matchup for a player. And it's commonly talked about defensive rankings overall, and I'm going to tell you why you need to look a little bit deeper when it comes to defensive rankings. If you stay till the end of this video, I guarantee you'll learn at least one thing that'll make you a smarter sports bettor. I don't hear this talked about enough, and it is very important to understand, and let's just get right into it. So overall defense is an average. So this mixes all positions together. It mixes all stats together, and this is good when you're betting teams looking at overall defense, but this is not good when betting player props. So for this example, we're going to have Team X. We're going to be looking at their overall defense. So when we're looking at this team, their defensive rating is 25th in the league, which is generally bad. Their point per game allowed is ranked 28th, which also would be considered bad. So the takeaway that most average people have when they look at this is that this defense right here is overall just a bad defense. So what do people do when they see this? They think that you should just come in and hammer overs. But I'm going to show you why that is not always the case. Because when we look at this a little deeper, what we'll see is that versus point guards, they're actually 10th best. And then let's say versus centers, they're actually the 2nd best. They are not bad versus everyone. They're just bad on average. And I'm going to show you how to actually look at this and break it all down. So you're going to start with the position: point guard, shooting guard, center. Then you have to pick the stats: points, rebounds, assists, 3-pointers made, and you're going to check the last 10 to 20 games. And inside Dante's data, inside our VIP, we have hit rate sheets that break down how each team defends each position for each stat. So a team, and I'll show you in a sec, could be ranked really good on a certain stat versus point guards and bad in another category. So some teams will have our position groups. We'll have point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center. So in this example, we're going to be in the NBA, but this can be applied to all sports. Same concept applies. In this example, we're going to be looking at points. So for point guard, they could have the 7th toughest. Shooting guard, they could have the 25th easiest. Small forward, they could have the 20th easiest. Power forward, they could have the 18th easiest. And then versus centers, they could have the 5th toughest. So in this case, if we're betting overs, if we're targeting this team and they're playing this exact example, for point guards and centers, it might not be best to be betting overs. It's a tougher matchup. It can be very situational. But when you look at shooting guards, small forwards, and power forwards, then it might make sense to take overs on these because they're going to have easier matchups given this situation. So just looking at overall defensive rankings does not really help you all that much. It can give you an idea sometimes, but also on the other hand, it can be extremely misleading when you're looking at rankings. I mean, you can have a point guard who absolutely is a lock but can't rebound for shit for whatever reason, or there could be many different scenarios. So that's why we have to break it down by position. And it could be a terrible defense, but they have one absolute lock who locks up whoever they're guarding, and you might look and be like, oh, they have an easy matchup because of the rankings, and that just simply is not the case. So how do we use this? So inside Dante's data, like I mentioned, we have hit rate sheets that show all these rankings. So each day for every single statistical category, points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, all of that, we have rankings. And all the rankings are for that specific stat for that specific position. And same goes for all the other sports that we cover. So if there is a green matchup, we're going to be more comfortable on overs. If it's a red matchup or a tougher matchup, I'd be more comfortable on unders or just passing that bet altogether. And when we're looking at these defensive rankings, this is a filter. This is not a full system. So just because a team struggles to defend centers does not mean that that center automatically is going to go and ball out that night. So if we have a player and he's a shooting guard and he is a scorer, let's say the prop for points that day is set at 21.5 points. We're going to want to verify, are his minutes stable? Especially during trade deadlines in the NBA, minutes might decline on players that might be in trade talks because they don't want them to get injured. Also, I'm going to be looking at recent form. That player could have been on a hot streak and everybody was talking about him, and then all of a sudden he had a drop off in production for whatever reason. We need to be aware of that. Over the last 20 games, he could have a high hit rate and have hit this line 15 out of his last 20, but then we dive a little bit deeper and hasn't even hit it in the last 5 games, or just hit it 1, maybe 2 times. And then we're going to verify and check that defensive ranking. And in this case, for small forwards, their defensive rank's 28th, but it could be deceiving by some because overall, their defensive ranking is actually pretty decent. They're ranked 10th overall in overall defense. So this team's solid, but they struggled to stop shooting guards. Also, we're going to look at recent form versus that team. So over the last 5 to 10 games versus that team, has this player been able to hit this prop? Has this player been consistent? Because there are some players that are very consistent, but for whatever reason, they play terrible versus certain teams. And then it could be the opposite. So let's say instead of the 28th ranked team here, or the 28th defense versus that position rather, and let's just say they are the 10th ranked versus shooting guards. Well, we check and verify, and we see that this player has killed this line and gone over 5 out of the last 5 matchups. And then maybe we even dig a little deeper and realize that this player is from that area, maybe has family at the game, because this all comes into play. If players have family at the game, or it's from their hometown or where they're from, a lot of times they'll want to go ball out and do a little bit better than normal because they have a little bit of extra motivation, and we need to look at these types of things. So when it comes to defensive rankings, we are looking at the overall defense. The average hides matchups. I cannot stress that enough. You have to look at it per position, per stat. Use the position, use the stat, and use a recent sample size and verify all the other different factors that can come into play. Let your defensive rankings guide your risk, but it's not an automatic bet. And sometimes I'll look back at a player, they'll have a great matchup, they'll be hitting their line, but they have just performed very poorly versus that team, and therefore it's just not worth the risk. I need to see them play well versus this team, because there are players like that for whatever reason, in certain arenas, or especially in the NFL, different surfaces, they play a lot worse. So the more data we have to go off of, the more history we have on the player, and the more information we have, the easier it is. And that's why I built Dante's data, in order to be able to track all of this and make everything much more clear, a simple, repeatable system where you can basically wipe out all the hours of research that you have to put in order to find these, and basically have it done for you. So if you want to see what that looks like, I left the links down below. In our VIP, we have hit rate sheets that we drop every single day for every single sport, every single position, and every single stat. And it shows these rankings on how these teams defend each position for each individual stat. So I hope this video helped. If it did, smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't. And here is another video to watch, and I will see you in the next one.